Praise to the Most High God, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And peace to everyone that's here today in the name of Jesus. Peace to everyone that's watching us live on the internet and listening in on the phone line. And always it's good to stand before you on the Lord's Sabbath day. And today, you know, this is our version of what they call Black history. Because our history, what they are feeding us is nothing beyond the shores of America. However, if you read and understand the Bible, the people that's in the Bible, the region that they are in, the people had to be of color. And there's no doubt about that. Even the archaeologists will let you know that. No matter how the Arabs took over Egypt and all that, the Egyptians was black as this pulpit right here. And Israel dwelt among them. And we're going to show you who Israel is. That's why the title of the lesson is Israel. Who are they, first of all, and where are they? Because Israel is not a country, it's a nationality of people. It's not just a country. So now we need to find out who they are, because apparently the world at large don't know who they are. They call them Israelis or Jews or Jewish, whatever you want to call it, but the Lord is real specific about his people, and he calls them Israelites because they are named after him. So we're going to get into this lesson. We're going to backtrack a little bit, but we're going to move forward, then we're going to move back. So we're going to have to identify Israel. Who are they? Because they are supposed to be God's chosen people to do what? Teach the rest of the world how to serve him. So now let's find out who they are, because Israel is real important. Because if you have a concordance, you can look at Israel and it appears in the Bible over 2,000 times. So it's got to be important to God. So let's look at Israel. Who are they? Amos chapter 3. We're going to start there. Oh, did the kids leave? I keep forgetting. They gone? Oh, okay. Amos chapter 3. And we got a little, a few references to cover. It's going to be a short lesson by my standards. Amos chapter 3. And we're going to pick it up at verse 1. Amos 3:1. Okay, go ahead.
Hear this word that the Lord hath spoken against you, O children of Israel, against the whole family which I brought up from the land of Egypt, saying, you only have I known of all the families of the earth. Therefore, I will punish you for all your iniquities.
So the Lord is saying, you only, Israel, you only have I known of all the families of the earth. So all the nationalities that's on the earth, the Lord has a specific relationship with Israel. So if you want to, Israel is your God, is your personal savior, if you want to look at it like that. But he only has a relationship with Israel. Therefore, we're going to get the blunt of the punishment. That's why we can't get away with nothing. Anybody else can get away with something small. When it comes to us, it's great. Yeah. Because we are God's people. Okay? So, Deuteronomy 14. Deuteronomy 14. And we're going to read one verse. So not only does Israel have a special relationship with God, that's why we don't get away with nothing. We punish for everything. Mm-hmm. It's just like your child. If you love your child, they ain't getting away with nothing. Somebody else's child may get away because they may be under your care, but you ain't going to get them like you did your child. You might tell their parents on them. But if your child breaks somebody's window, he got the strap coming. Mm-hmm. Somebody else, you will tell their parents, but your child, you're going to get punished for everything. Deuteronomy 14, verse 2, read it.
For thou art an holy people unto the Lord thy God, and the Lord hath chosen thee to be a peculiar people unto himself above all the nations that are upon the earth.
So Israel is a holy people, and the Lord has chosen them to be a peculiar people. Now, peculiar means you stand out. Mm-hmm. And Israel is supposed to stand out because we are God's people. But right now, we are standing out in a bad way. Mm-hmm. And we're supposed to be standing out for righteousness. People are supposed to come to us on how to serve God. But because we're going to get into it, because we went back door, we are standing out in a negative way. And people are mimicking us in that negative way. Let's go to Romans 3. So this is a peculiar people, a holy people. And other scriptures will tell you that they are a nation of priests. Romans 3, and we're going to pick it up at verse 1. Romans chapter 3 and verse 1. Okay, read it.
What advantage then hath the Jew? Or what profit is there of circumcision?
So what advantage is being Jew or Israel? And what profit is there of the circumcision? What? Go ahead.
Much every way, chiefly because that unto them were committed the oracles of God.
So we were given the answers. Oracles means answers. God took us out of Egypt, gave them good laws, statutes, commandments, and judgments, that if a man do them, he will live in them. And that will be your wisdom and sight and understanding of all the nations. That's how we was going to stand out. We was not going to be in church on Sunday. We was going to be keeping the fourth commandment, keeping the Sabbath day holy. We wouldn't be having no trees in our houses, coloring no eggs, run around with flowers and milk duds, giving it to your spouse. We will be keeping the commandments. We would have no other gods before God. We'd be honoring our father and mother. We wouldn't be stealing and killing and cheating everybody. That's how you stand out. And this society, this day and age, wickedness is good. You a square if you're doing good. Something wrong with you for doing right. You're supposed to do wrong, but the Lord's people are supposed to stand out. Peculiar. You strange if you're doing right. And that's strange nowadays. Because right now, wickedness is prevailing. And remember, they're creating diseases for people who are normal. Like homophobia. That's a new disease for normal people that don't like 2 men and 2 women getting married, you know. Men marrying men, women marrying women. We got a disease. But they just flipping it. But we know what's going on because we're reading this book. So the oracles with the answers to God were given to his people. And they were supposed to teach everybody else. Teach the rest of the nations. Let's go to John 4. So we find some characteristics of Israel, who they are. Then we're going to get into what they look like. But these are some good characteristics. You got a personal relationship with God. He's giving you all the answers. You stand out for a good reason. Also this, John 4, verse 22, read it.
Ye worship, ye know not what. We know what we worship, for salvation is of the Jews.
So you're supposed to go to an Israelite to find out how to get salvation. That's a good answer. That's an oracle right there. And Israel is supposed to know this. We finished that one?
No.
Go ahead.
But the hour cometh, and now is, when the true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For the Father seeketh such to worship him.
Because right now, ain't nobody worshiping the Father in spirit and truth. They worshiping trees and eggs. Which don't have nothing to do with the Father. But the time is going to come when people are going to worship the Father in spirit and in truth. Let's go to Exodus 32. Deuteronomy 7. Deuteronomy 7. So all these traits are describing Israel, who they are. Because apparently the world at large is lost. They don't know who Israel is. You don't know who Israel is. Israel don't know who Israel is. That's right. But we're going to find out today. Deuteronomy 7, and pick it up at verse 6. Read it.
For thou art an holy people unto the Lord thy God. The Lord thy God hath chosen thee to be a special people unto himself, above all people that are upon the face of the earth.
So this is the second time the Lord said this. He chose Israel to be a special people to him. Go ahead.
The Lord did not set his love upon you, nor choose you, because ye were more in number than any people, for ye were the fewest of all people.
So we were the fewest of all people, but the Lord chose us for a reason. What was that? Go ahead.
But because the Lord loved you, and because he would keep the oath which he had sworn unto your fathers, hath the Lord brought you out with a mighty hand, and redeemed you out of the house of bondmen from the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Know therefore that the Lord thy God, he is God, the faithful God, which keepeth covenant and mercy with them that love him, and keep his commandments to 1,000 generations.
So the Lord chose Israel out of love. Why? Because he made an oath to Abraham. Praise the Lord for Abraham. One man he made an oath to, and what did that man do? He kept the laws and statutes and commandments of God. That's why he swore to Abraham. That's why. Keep reading. Verse 10.
And repayeth them that hate him to their face, to destroy them. He will not be slack to him that hateth him. He will repay him to his face.
So if you love the Lord, the book say you're going to keep his commandments. If you don't, you got a problem. Seriously. People are playing around with these commandments. They just legalized adultery in South Korea. Wow. It's legal now. It used to be against the law on the books, but now they done took that law off the books, and now it's a free-for-all. Wow. And that's totally against the commandments. Verse 11, go ahead.
Thou shalt therefore keep the commandments and the statutes and the judgments, which I command thee this day to do them.
So that's what he's telling his people. They're supposed to keep these laws, because it is your understanding in the sight of all nations. Let's go to Exodus 32. Let's look at another characteristic of his people. They're holy, or they're supposed to be holy. They're strange, supposed to be strange in a good way. And they also this. Exodus 32 and verse 9. Read it.
And the Lord said unto Moses, I have seen this people, and behold, it is a stiff-necked people.
And he ain't lying about that. Israel is stiff-necked. That means hard-headed. That means you don't want to follow no instructions. You don't want to be told what to do. You want to do your own thing. And we are that people to the T, even to this day. And that's why we standing out. That's why we peculiar now in a bad way. Because the Lord told us not to prostitute your daughters. What do we got our sisters and brothers, sisters out there doing? And what I'm saying, brothers too, yeah, they doing the same thing. Dressing up like women. The Lord say a man shall not wear that pertaineth to a woman. Now it's fashionable for Israel to go out there with a dress and high heels. And they put it on TV. Totally opposite of what the Lord said. Go to Isaiah 41. Isaiah 41. So we know we stiff-necked, hard-headed. But this is the flip side of being holy. Unholy. But these are the traits of Israel. This is who they are. Isaiah 41. And pick it up at verse 8. 41 and 8. Okay, read.
But thou, Israel, art my servant, Jacob, whom I have chosen, the seed of Abraham, my friend.
So thou, Israel, art my servant, Jacob, whom I have chosen, the seed of Abraham. So Israel came out of the seed of Abraham. Keep reading.
Thou, whom I have taken from the ends of the earth, and called thee from the chief men thereof, and said unto thee, Thou art my servant, I have chosen thee, and not cast thee away.
Thou art my servant, I have chosen thee, and will not cast thee away. So Israel came out of the seed of Abraham. So let's go trace it down. Go to Genesis 9. Genesis 9. Because we're looking at a physical nation that came out of a physical man. So if Israel came out of the seed of Abraham, we got to see what lineage Abraham came from. Now, you're going to be surprised when you find out that you're not who you people been telling you who you are or who you think you are. Mr. and Mrs. Egyptologist. Genesis 9, and pick it up at verse 1. Go ahead.
And God blessed Noah and his sons, and said unto them, be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth.
So now this is after the flood. There was only 8 people saved from the flood: Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, and their wives. And when they came up out of the ark, the Lord told them to be fruitful, multiply, and replenish the earth. So if you didn't come out of one of these 3 boys, you are not from this planet. Skip down to verse 18 and read it.
And the sons of Noah that went forth of the ark were Shem, and Ham, and Japheth. And Ham is the father of Canaan. These are the 3 sons of Noah, and of them was the whole earth overspread.
So Shem, Ham, and Japheth, these are the 3 sons of Noah, and out of these 3 boys, the whole earth was overspread. It was repopulated. Let's go to Genesis 10, and let's look at this population and see who's who. Genesis 10, verse 1, read it.
Now these are the generations of the son of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And unto them were sons born after the flood. The sons of Japheth, Gomer, and Magog, and Madai, and Javan, and Tubal, and Meshach, and Tyrus. And the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, and Riphath, and Togarmah. And the sons of Japhan, Elisha, and Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodanim. By these were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands, every one after his tongue, after their families, in their nations.
So we see Japheth's descendants became what? The Gentiles. The isles of the Gentiles, just a bloodline. That's all it is. We're talking about nations of people, nationalities, families, people that speak different languages, but they all are Gentiles. So let's look at Japheth. Since they call him the isles of the Gentiles, it's on the hand. I couldn't print up everything because, I got an ink problem, but I could print up what I could. So Japheth, we're going to read this out of the Smith Bible Dictionary, but I printed it up for you, fortunately. You put that down. You read it out of this right here. That's for them.
Okay.
We got to let them know this coming out of a book.
Okay.
This coming from the Smith Bible Dictionary. Read what Japheth say.
Japheth, one of the 3 sons of Noah, the descendants of Japheth, occupied the isles of the Gentiles.
And that's what we read in Genesis. Okay, go ahead.
Genesis 10:5, the coastlands of the Mediterranean Sea in Europe and in Asia Minor, whence they spread northward over the whole continent of Europe and a considerable portion of Asia.
So from thence they spread northward over what? The whole continent of Europe and some of Asia. So now, let's look at some of these countries that's in Europe that we can identify as Gentiles. Read what's highlighted in yellow.
Okay.
Let's look at some of these Gentilian countries, if that's even a word. Go ahead, let's see.
Armenia.
Armenia, that's a Gentile, right? Kardashians, Armenians, right? Gentiles. Go ahead.
France.
French people, Gentiles.
Germany.
Germans, Gentiles.
Greece.
Greeks, Gentiles.
Ireland.
Irish people, Gentiles.
Italy.
Italy, Italians, Gentiles.
Luxembourg.
Luxembourg, over there by Germany too, Gentiles.
Portugal.
Portugal, right over there next to Spain. Spanish speaking people, Gentiles. Go ahead.
Russia.
Russia, we know they Gentiles. Go ahead.
Spain.
Spain, right next to Portugal.
Ukraine.
Ukraine.
United Kingdom.
England, Gentiles.
Vatican City.
And Vatican City. We had to throw them in there because they don't think they are a sovereign nation inside of Italy. So, Gentiles. Just a bloodline. What do all these people have in common? We commonly call them white folks. That's all it is. We got some Gentiles running around up in here. If you raise your hands if you're a Gentile. Just a few of y'all, see? It's just a bloodline. But the misconception is if you're not a Jew, you're a Gentile, which is crazy. Because how can Israel be a Gentile? Let's go back to the book. Pick it up at verse 6. Let's look at Ham. So we're still trying to find Israel. We know Israel did not come out of Japheth. Because Japheth's are the Gentiles or the Europeans. Go ahead.
And the sons of Ham, Cush, and Mizraim, and Phut, and Canaan. And the sons of Cush, Seba, and Havilah, and Sabta, and Raamah, and Sabteka, And the sons of Raamah, Sheba, and Dedan. And Cush begat Nimrod, and he began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord, wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord.
So we know all about Nimrod. He's the one that started all this paganism that's running around. But he came out of Ham. Okay, keep reading.
In the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, and Erech, and Akkad, and Calneh, and in the land of Shinar. Out of that land went forth Asher, and builded Nineveh, in the city of Rehoboth, and Calah, and reasoned between Nineveh and Calah. The same is a great city. And Mizraim begat Ludim, and Anamim, and Lehabim, and Nephtahim, and Pathrusim, and Casluhim, out of whom came Philistim and Caphtorim.
Okay, that's good on Ham because he got a lot of people out there. But let's look at Ham. Let's send a handout out of the Zondervan Pictorial Bible Dictionary. Ham.
Ham, the youngest son of Noah, born probably about 96 years before the flood, and the one of the 8 persons to live through the flood. He became the progenitor of the dark races.
So Ham became the progenitor of the dark races. Like who? Give me an example. Go ahead.
Not the Negroes.
Not the Negroes.
But the Egyptians.
The Egyptians.
Ethiopians.
Ethiopians.
Libyans.
Libyans.
Canaanites.
Canaanites. So Ham, progenitor of the dark races, but not the Negroes. And who the Negroes around here? Plenty of them in here, right? Raise your hand if you're a Negro. So you did not come from Ham. But we want to identify ourselves with people who look like us, but they are not of our nationality. Ham is a totally different bloodline. His descendants populated what we call Africa. But just because we are in the mix of them, that don't make us them. You can get an example of that in Ethiopia. They had some Israelites who claimed to be from the tribe of Dan in Ethiopia, and they was getting beat down by the Ethiopians who were Hamites that was there. So they had to fly them out and take them over there to Israel, where they got under that Judaism. But they was getting beat down, and they looked just like them. What was the difference? Nationality. One was Israel, one wasn't. So Ham is the progenitor of the dark races, but not the Negroes. So if the Negroes did not come out of Ham, we only got one son left, and that's Shem. So let's trace it down. We finished that?
No.
Keep reading.
His indecency, when his father lay drunken, brought a curse upon Canaan.
Okay, let's get back to the book now. Because now we got to find Israel. And we know Israel did not come out of Japheth, and he definitely didn't come out of Ham. So who are we, people? Who are we? Are we Semitic? It's the only son left. Genesis, pick it up at verse 21. Skip down to 21. Let's look at Shem. Go ahead.
Unto Shem also, the father of all the children of Eber, the brother of Japheth, the elder, even to him were children born. The children of Shem, Elam, and Asher, and Arphaxad, and Lud, and Aram.
And we ain't going to get into all them names, but they dwelt in the land of Canaan, in the African, so-called African continent. They dwelt there in that so-called Middle East. Look in the back of your Bible if you got them maps. It'll show you exactly where they dwelt. So they was intermingling amongst people that looked like them. Let's go to Genesis 11 and pick it up at verse 10. Genesis 11 and verse 10. Okay, read it.
These are the generations of Shem. Shem was 100 years old and begat Arphaxad 2 years after the flood. And Shem lived after he begat Arphaxad 500 years and begat sons and daughters. Arphaxad lived 530 years and begat Selah. And Arphaxad lived after he begat Selah 403 years and begat sons and daughters. And Selah lived 30 years and begat Eber. And Selah lived after he begat Eber 403 years and begat sons and daughters. And Eber lived 430 years and begat Peleg.
Okay, skip down to verse 24 and read it. Go ahead.
And Nahor lived 29 years and begat Terah. And Nahor lived after he begat Terah 119 years and begat sons and daughters. And Terah lived 70 years and begat Abram, Nahor, and Haran.
So now we finally got down to Abram, who was later name was changed to Abraham. So here we are. Abraham, who the seed of Israel came out of Shem. So now let's go to Genesis 12 and pick it up at verse 1. 12 and 1. Because we ain't got to Israel yet. We went forward, but now we're going backwards, and now we're going to catch up with ourselves. 12 and 1. Go ahead.
Now the Lord has said unto Abram, Get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, unto a land that I will show thee. And I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing.
So now when the Lord is telling Abraham this, Abraham is old, living with his daddy, and he ain't got no kids. He got an old wife. He an old man with an old wife, and they ain't got no kids. But the Lord told him, look, get out your father's house, and I'm going to make you a great nation, and I'm going to bless you. Go ahead.
And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee. And in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed.
Go ahead.
So Abram departed as the Lord had spoken unto him, and Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he departed out of Haran. And Abram took Sarai, his wife, and Lot his brother's son, and all their substance that they had gathered, and the souls that they had gotten in Haran. And they went forth to go into the land of Canaan, and into the land of Canaan they came.
Now, that's a long time to be living at home. 75 years, and you still living in your parents' house. Imagine how old his parents were. But he was 75, and he booked up, just like the Lord told him to do. Keep reading.
And Abram passed through the land unto a place of Shechem, unto a plain of Moreh, and the Canaanite was then in the land. And the Lord appeared unto Abram and said, Unto thy seed will I give this land. And there builded he an altar unto the Lord who appeared unto him.
So who was in the land? The Canaanite. And that is the descendant of Ham. You got Semitic and Hamitic people coexisting, living side by side. Different nationalities living together. We finished that?
Yes.
Genesis 15. So now he don't have no kids, but the Lord say he going to multiply them. Genesis 15 and 1, read it.
After these things, the word of the Lord came unto Abram in a vision, saying, Fear not, Abram, I am thy shield, and thy exceeding great reward. And Abram said, Lord God, what wilt thou give me, seeing I go childless, and the steward of my house is this Eliezer of Damascus? And Abram said, Behold, to me thou hast given no seed, and lo, one born of my house is mine heir. And behold, the word of the Lord came unto him, saying, This shall not be thine heir, but he that shall come forth out of thine own bowels shall be thine heir.
So Abraham is trying to pass off Eliezer as his heir, but the Lord said, no, you're going to have you a son, dude. One to come out of your own bowels. You're going to have a son. Keep reading.
And he brought him forth abroad and said, Look now toward heaven, and tell the stars if thou be able to number them. And he said unto him, So shall thy seed be.
And not only are you going to have a son, but your descendants are going to be like the stars of heaven. That's a lot. Keep reading.
And he believed in the Lord, and he counted it to him for righteousness.
And Abraham believed what God told him. Believed him. Everything the Lord told him, he believed, and he acted upon his faith. Even after he had his son, the Lord told him, look, go sacrifice him. He didn't have no problem doing it. Didn't bat an eye. I don't care what the movies may say. He didn't bat an eye according to the book. I didn't see him going through no kind of emotional strain and should I do this or should I not? The book say he went and got Isaac and said, let's go. We finished that?
Verse 7.
Keep reading.
And he said unto him, I am the Lord that brought thee out of Ur of the Chaldees to give thee this land to inherit it.
Okay, let's go to Genesis 25 now. Oh, skip down to 13. Skip down to verse 13. Read it.
And he said unto Abram, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. And also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge, and afterward shall they come out with great substance.
So not only are you going to have a son and your descendants going to be like the sand of the stars in the sky, they're going to be in a strange land and be afflicted for 400 years. And when I'm done with that affliction, they're going to come out with reparations for 400 years of slavery. 400 years. Yeah. We're going to read that. Let's go to Genesis 15 now. 25. So Abraham, he had Isaac. We ain't going to get into all that. That's another lesson. So he had Isaac. And let's see what the Lord told Isaac. 25 and 19. Read it.
And these are the generations of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham begat Isaac.
So Abraham begot Isaac, and he had a wife. Go ahead.
And Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah to wife, the daughter of Bethuel, the Syrian, of Padanaram, the sister of Laban, the Syrian. And Isaac entreated the Lord for his wife, because she was barren. And the Lord was entreated of him, and Rebekah his wife conceived. And the children struggled together within her. And she said, if it be so, why am I thus? And she went to inquire of the Lord.
So now Isaac's wife Rebekah was pregnant and she had twins. And them babies is in her stomach fighting. Go ahead.
And the Lord said unto her, 2 nations are in thy womb, and 2 manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels.
So 2 nations is in your womb. That's 2 different nationalities. And 2 manner of people. They're going to be different. They will not be the same. Go ahead.
And the one people shall be stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger. And when her days to be delivered were fulfilled, behold, there were twins in her womb. And the first came out red and all over like a hairy garment. And they called his name Esau. And after that came his brother out, and his hand took hold of Esau's heel, and his name was called Jacob.
And why was there no description of Jacob? Because he looked like everybody else. They had to make a distinction between the nationalities. One of them came out red and hairy all over like a garment. And then Jacob just came out because he looked just like everybody else. So there's a distinction right there. This is your twin brother. He don't look like you. Go ahead.
And Isaac was 80 years old when she bare them. And the boys grew. And Esau was a cunning hunter and a man of the field. And Jacob was a plain man, dwelling in tents.
So Esau, he was a cunning hunter, like he is today. He know how to make that money. Go ahead.
And Isaac loved Esau, because he did eat of his venison. But Rebekah loved Jacob. And Jacob sowed pottage. And Esau came from the field, and he was faint. And Esau said to Jacob, feed me, I pray thee, with that same red pottage, for I am faint. Therefore was his name called Edom.
So now Esau's name is also Edom, and Idumea, and Bozrah, and all that other stuff. Now let's go to Genesis 28, because we got to get to Israel. So we got Abraham's grandkids, Esau and Jacob. Esau is Edom. Let's look at Jacob. 28 and 10. Read it.
And Jacob went out from Beersheba and went toward Haran. And he lighted upon a certain place and tarried there all night, because the sun was set. And he took of the stones of that place and put them for his pillows, and lay down in that place to sleep. And he dreamed, and behold, a ladder set up on the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven. And behold, the angels of God ascending and descending on it. And behold, the Lord stood above it and said, I am the Lord God of Abraham thy father, and the God of Isaac, and the land whereon thou liest, to thee will I give it into thy seed.
So the covenant is being passed down from Abraham to Isaac, now to Jacob. Not to Esau, to Jacob. The same thing he told Abraham is what he told Isaac. He said, the land where thou liest will I give it to thee and to thy seed. Go ahead.
And thy seed shall be as the dust of the earth, and thou shalt spread abroad to the west, and to the east, and to the north, and to the south. and in thee and in thy seed shall all the families of the earth be blessed.
Now, when he's making this statement to Jacob, Jacob ain't got no kids yet. He don't have any children yet. He ain't even have a wife. But you see how the Lord is doing it to see where your faith is going to lie. Verse 15, read it.
And behold, I am with thee, and will keep thee in all places whither thou goest, and will bring thee again into this land. For I will not leave thee until I have done that which I have spoken to thee of. And Jacob awaked out of his sleep, and he said, surely the Lord is in this place, and I knew it not.
So when he woke up from that dream, he was like, oh, man. But the Lord said, look, I will not leave thee until I have done that which I have spoken to thee. So he wasn't going to leave him until the Lord accomplished his business, what he was going to supposed to do with this nation. Let's go to Genesis 32. Genesis 32. And pick it up at verse 24. 32 and 24. Okay, read.
And Jacob was left alone, and there wrestled with the man with him until the breaking of the day. And when he saw that he prevailed not against him, he touched the hollow of his thigh, and the hollow of Jacob's thigh was out of joint as he wrestled with him. And he said, let me go, for the day breaketh. And he said, I will not let thee go, except thou bless me. And he said unto him, what is thy name? And he said, Jacob. And he said, thy name shall be called no more Jacob, but Israel. For as a prince hast thou power with God and with men, and hast prevailed.
So now Jacob's name was changed to Israel, just like we read in Isaiah. Israel, my servant, Jacob, comes from the seed of Abraham. We got Abraham, Isaac, and Israel. We finished that?
Yes.
Okay, let's go to Exodus chapter 1. Exodus 1. So the Lord blessed Jacob. He gave him 12 sons and 1 daughter. Because you're going to have a lot of kids in order for you to multiply, or your descendants to multiply. So the Lord blessed him. He told him what he was going to do. He went from Abraham, went from 2 sons. Isaac had 2 sons. But Abraham also had some children by another wife, Keturah, which we didn't read, but you can read that on your own. But we're dealing with what's being handed down with the covenant and the people, Israel. That's what we're dealing with. Who are they and where are they? Exodus 1, verse 1, read it.
Now these are the names of the children of Israel, which came into Egypt. Every man in his household came with Jacob. Reuben, and Simeon, and Levi, and Judah, and Issachar, and Zebulun, and Benjamin, Dan, and Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. And all the souls that came out of the loins of Jacob were 70 souls, for Joseph was in Egypt already. And Joseph died, and all his brethren, and all that generation. And the children of Israel were fruitful, and increased abundantly, and multiplied, and waxed exceeding mighty, and the land was filled with them.
So 70 people went down into Egypt. And he just listed the 12 sons. But if you read Genesis chapter 46, it lists all 69 people. He had 12 sons with him, 1 daughter, 53 grandsons, 1 granddaughter, 2 great-grandsons, 69 people right there. Jacob plus Jacob is 70. All these boys had to get their wives from somewhere. And they were in Egypt, who came out of Ham, who was the progenitor of the dark races, but not the Negroes. So you got Israel dwelling amongst the Egyptians, and I'm quite sure, you got 1 daughter that's old, 1 granddaughter, but everybody else is males. Where did they get their wives from? From among the people, from the Egyptians. So, that being said, let's go to Exodus 12. Because we know they waxed abundantly, which means they was making babies like crazy. They was happy to be there. They was treated good for a while, but then the Egyptians got scared because there was too many of them. So what did they do? Put them in slavery. And the Lord told Abraham, your seed was going to be afflicted for 400 years. Well, let's read it. Exodus 12 and verse 40. Verse 40, read it.
Now the sojourning of the children of Israel who dwelt in Egypt was 430 years.
Now they dwelt in Egypt for 430 years, but when they got there in the beginning, everything was cool. So it was 30 years of good life, 400 years of bondage. Because they was living good for a while. 30 years. You can have a whole lot of babies in 30 years, especially if you got all them males. And the Lord set it in motion that Israel became a nation in Egypt. Because if you look at when they numbered Israel, when they came out of Egypt, it was 1 million plus, not counting the women and the children. So skip back up to 36 and read it.
And the Lord gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they lent unto them such things as they required, and they spoiled the Egyptians.
So once they got out of Egypt, the Lord gave them favor in the sight of the Egyptians, and all they had to do was ask for them. Just ask for them. They give it to you. Because after the Lord brought all them plagues on Egypt, and the final plague was killing the firstborn, they wanted them Israelites out. Get up out of here. And all they had to do was ask them. Ask them whatever you want. The Lord told them, ask them whatever you want, they will give it to you. They will give you the shirt off your back. Just ask them. Give me them shoes. Just leave. Because if you look at all that stuff that they came out when they built the tabernacle of the congregation, where did they get all that stuff from? The Egyptians. And this was some good stuff too, man. There's some choice silver, gold, the tents for the curtain, all that good stuff. Everything, reparations. Let's go to 37, read it.
And the children of Israel journeyed from Ramesses to Succoth, about 600,000 on foot that were men beside children. And a mixed multitude went up also with them, and flocks and herds, even very much cattle.
So they went out of Egypt, and a mixed multitude went with them also. So because they had some sense. After seeing the God of Israel bring Egypt down, wasn't no sense in staying in Egypt. We got to roll with y'all. Y'all got all the stuff. Let's go to Deuteronomy 28 now. Deuteronomy 28. So let's look at what the Lord told his people. So we're still dealing with Israel. Deuteronomy 28. We should all know this by heart, but it's good to read it though. 28:1, read it.
And it shall come to pass, if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe and to do all his commandments, which I command thee this day, that the Lord thy God will set thee on high above all nations of the earth. And all these blessings shall come on thee and overtake thee, if thou shalt hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God.
So if you listen to the Lord, do all his commandments, then all these blessings is going to overtake the children of Israel. Let's look at them. Go ahead.
Blessed shalt thou be in the city, and blessed shalt thou be in the field.
You're going to be blessed in the city and in the suburbs. Go ahead.
Blessed shall be the fruit of thy body.
Your kids going to be blessed. You're going to have good kids. Go ahead.
And the fruit of thy ground, and the fruit of thy cattle, the increase of thy kind, and the flocks of thy sheep. Blessed shall be thy basket and thy store.
Everything you put your hand to, you're going to have the best businesses. Keep reading.
Blessed shalt thou be when thou comest in, and blessed shalt thou be when thou goest out. The Lord shall cause thine enemies to rise up against thee to be smitten before thy face. They shall come out against thee one way, and flee before thee 7 ways.
Can you imagine nobody being scared of you? You don't even have to have a pistol or nothing. All you got to do is walk in, and they're going to be scared. Because you got God on your side. Look at what David did when he went against Goliath. As big as he was, Israel over there shaking in their boots. David went out there with a sling and a stone and said, I come in the name of the God of Israel, punk. What you going to do now? And slung that stone and got him right here. And took his sword and cut his head off. When you got God on your side, you don't need no pistol. You don't need no Uzi. You don't need none of that. Keep reading.
The Lord shall command thee blessing. The Lord shall command the blessing upon thee in thy storehouses, and all that thou settest thine hand unto. And he shall bless thee in the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. The Lord shall establish thee an holy people unto himself, as he hath sworn unto thee, if thou shalt keep the commandments of the Lord thy God and walk in his ways.
So you see, there's some work to keep these blessings. You have to keep the commandments of God to get these blessings. You have to. There is no other choice in the matter. You cannot be blessed and highly favored if you're going to church on Sunday, because you're breaking the fourth commandment. There is no way, according to this Bible that we read, if you are not keeping the commandments, you got a problem. Let's read it. Skip down to verse 15. Go ahead.
But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe, to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee.
So you have to do all that the Lord commands you, not 9 of the commandments. You got to do all 10 of them. Keep reading.
Cursed shalt thou be in the city, and cursed shalt thou be in the field. Cursed shall be thy basket and thy store. Cursed shall be the fruit of thy body, and the fruit of thy land, the increase of thy kind, and the flocks of thy sheep. Cursed shalt thou be when thou comest in, and cursed shalt thou be when thou goest out.
So before you was blessed, but once you start breaking the commandments, now you got a curse coming up on you. And remember, they have not got in the land yet. This is before they crossed over the Jordan. So the Lord is pronouncing this sentence on them before they get into the land. And all this stuff has got to come to pass, because the Lord don't do no loose talk. If he say he going to do something, he going to do it. Only time he'll give you a pass and say, okay, I ain't going to do it while you alive, but I'm still going to do it. I'm just going to cut you a break. You ain't going to see this, but it's going to happen. And believe me, the blessings happen to Israel, and the curses happen to Israel too, and it's still going on to this day. And we're going to show you that. Keep reading.
The Lord shall send upon thee cursing, vexation, and rebuke, in all that thou settest thine hand unto for to do, until thou be destroyed, and until thou perish quickly, because of the wickedness of thy doings, whereby thou hast forsaken me.
So before you could start a business and it was booming, now you start a business and it's closing down. It booms, exactly. Go ahead.
The Lord shall make thee pestilence cleave unto thee, until he have consumed thee from off the land whither thou goest to possess it.
So pestilence is none other than disease. Look up on the CDC and see who's number 1 in all diseases, and you will find out who Israel is. Who's number 1? Go ahead. Skip down to verse 28 and read it.
The Lord shall smite thee with madness and blindness and astonishment of heart, and thou shalt grope at the noonday as the blind gropeth in darkness, and thou shalt not prosper in thy ways, and thou shalt be only oppressed and spoiled evermore, and no man shall save thee.
So the Lord shall smite thee with madness. You're going to be walking around mad all the time, mad at the world. Go over there to Lamert Park, look at the mad Hebrews over there. Them brothers is mad. Look at the ones that's standing on the corners, preaching all this hate. And they Israel, just mad. Skip down to verse 30 and read it. Read verse 30. Go ahead.
Thou shalt betroth a wife, and another man shall lie with her. Thou shalt build an house, and thou shalt not dwell therein. Thou shalt plant a vineyard, and shalt not gather the grapes thereof.
Now this is happening to Israel. This has only happened to Israel. And they show it every year around this time during the Black History Month, when they show all the slave movies. This is what happened to Israel. You got you a wife, don't matter, she ain't your wife, she the master. Whenever the master want her, he can go down there and get her. And there ain't nothing you can do about it. This only happened to God's people. Okay, nobody else lay claim to this. But then you got somebody wants you to telling you that you a Gentile. Please. Go ahead.
Thine ox shall be slain before thine eyes, and thou shalt not eat thereof. Thine ass shall be violently taken away from before thy face, and shall not be restored to thee. Thy sheep shall be given unto thine enemies, and thou shalt have none to rescue them. Thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people, and thine eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all the day long. And there shall be no might in thine hand.
They take the kids away. Ain't nothing you can do about it. It's happened to only one people, the children of Israel. So who are they? They're not Ham, because Ham's descendants are the Egyptians, the Libyans, the Ethiopians, but not the Negroes. So we are Semitic people. We came out of Shem. Keep reading.
The fruit of thy land and all thy labors shall a nation which thou knowest not eat up, and thou shalt be only oppressed and crushed always.
So the fruit of your land and your labors shall a nation which thou knowest not eat up. Who built this country? This country was built off of slave labor. And they all hollering about reparations. You ain't getting nothing. You get nothing. You ain't getting nothing till the Lord come back. That's when you're going to get paid. You're going to enjoy the riches of the Gentiles. We can read that in the book. So all this loose talk about getting paid for slavery, no. You get nothing. It's all talk. You might as well save that breath. Where we at?
34.
34, read it.
So that thou shalt be mad for the sight of thine eyes, which thou shalt see.
Okay, skip down to 36 and read it.
The Lord shall bring thee, and thy king which thou shalt set over thee, unto a nation which neither thou nor thy fathers have known. And there shalt thou serve other gods, wood and stone.
Go ahead.
And thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword among all nations whither the Lord shall lead thee.
So we know what proverbs and bywords are, right? Whether everywhere you go, where you find Israel is located, they got a name for you. Listen to them Asian people when they doing your feet. Listen to the way they talk. You'll recognize one word. You'll recognize it. My father was in the Korean War. He was a nigga over there. That's the only thing they knew, but he recognized that word. Every nation, they got a name for you. I was in the Navy. It was a buddy of mine named Ricardo Smith. We called him Ricky. He was from Panama. Black as his pulpit. English was his second language. But he could speak Spanish and understand it like it wasn't nothing. He was working in a factory amongst all these Mexicans. They didn't know he understood Spanish. They was talking about him. Calling him everything out the book. And he understood it. So wherever you are, Israel, they got a name for you. Chinese got a name for you. Vietnamese got a name for you. The most common name amongst us, amongst the Gentiles, we know what that is. And they can't even get that right. They try to make it sound proper. But anyway. But that's a byword. What's another one? Coon. Porch monkey. And there's a bunch of them.
Yeah, it is.
But this is what happened to the children of Israel. What else? 41, read it.
Thou shalt beget sons and daughters, but thou shalt not enjoy them, for they shall go into captivity.
So you're going to have kids, they're going to go into captivity. That's only happened to one people. Go ahead.
All thy trees and fruit of thy land shall the locust consume. The stranger that is within thee shall get up above thee very high, and thou shalt come down very low.
So the stranger didn't even mention no nationality, just anybody. Why do they got Little Armenia. It's a Chinatown in every city, every major city. You got Korean town. You got Little Italy. What else? Greek town. But what do we have? The ghetto. And the ghetto was actually for your twin brother. So you can see how they flipped it on you.
Yeah.
And everybody that's in our neighborhood do not look like us that's selling us things. The stranger is going to get up high and you're going to become very low. This could only happen by the hand of the Lord.
Yes.
Because if our situations was political, I guarantee you they could pass some laws right now and free us from all this oppression. But it's not political. It's coming from God. We are destroyed on every side, economically, politically, socially, everywhere, on every side, we are destroyed as a nation of people. Keep reading.
He shall lend to thee, and thou shalt not lend to him. He shall be the head, and thou shalt be the tail. Moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee, and shall pursue thee, and overtake thee, till thou be destroyed, because thou hearkenest not unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to keep his commandments and statutes, which he commanded thee.
So all these curses are going to overtake you. You may think you're slipping through the cracks. You might have a little money in the bank, nice house, nice car. Next thing you know, you're in a car wreck. Car is gone. Stock market crash. 401k is gone. Now you can't pay your mortgage. Now you're on the street. Curses. Move out in the suburbs with all the good Gentiles because you got a little money. They're going to come and get you too. The curses are going to get you because this is what the book says. It said they're going to pursue thee and overtake thee. Keep reading.
And they shall be upon thee for a sign and for a wonder, and upon thy seed forever.
So they're going to be up on you for a sign and a wonder. What is a sign? It identifies something. So if you want to know who the children of Israel are, look at these curses. It'll tell you who they are. Are they oppressed? What people is oppressed? Who always on the bottom? Who got number one in every disease? That's a sign and a wonder. That must be the Negroes. Keep reading.
Because thou servest not the Lord thy God with joyfulness and with gladness of heart, for the abundance of all things. Therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee, in hunger and in thirst, in nakedness and in want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee.
And that yoke of iron, it was physical, now it's spiritual.
Yep.
Because we want everything. We ain't never had nothing. We jealous of all these other nations around us. That's why every time we get just a little bit of money, what do? We don't invest it. We get a car. Put the rims on it. Put the sound system on so they can know we coming. The ones that had the most money, you'll never know because they don't even dress like it. But because we don't have nothing, we got to show people we got it, and eventually we blow it, or they end up taking it away from us. But keep reading. We're gonna get through this. Keep reading.
The Lord shall bring a nation against thee from far, from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flieth, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand.
Go ahead.
A nation of fierce countenance, which shall not regard the person of the old, nor show favor to the young.
And we know that is taking place on what people? Right here. We are dying left and right. Don't nobody care. Look at George Zimmerman. He got off. Police put this brother in the chokehold up in New York.
Yeah.
Nobody said nothing. And that's just stuff that they put on the news. This stuff happens every day to only one particular people. Israel. The nations around us, they don't care for us. If they could institute slavery again with the chains, I guarantee you they would do it. And they would come straight for you. We finished?
Yeah, we're at 60 now.
Skip down to 60 and read it.
Moreover, he will bring upon thee all the diseases of Egypt, which thou wast afraid of, and they shall cleave unto thee. Also every sickness and every plague, which is not written in the book of this law, them will the Lord bring upon thee until thou be destroyed.
So whenever a new disease pops up, which really ain't nothing new, they just put a new name on it. Who gets it? Israel. That's why when they brought them Gentiles over here from that Ebola, I was like, they just bringing them over here so they can get get some kind of vaccination for them, and then it's going to spread into Israel. Because they always put Israel always a poster boy for something. So this Gentile, he real slick. But it's all in the hands of the Lord. But go ahead.
62. And ye shall be left few in number, whereas ye were as the stars of heaven for multitude, because thou wouldest not obey the voice of the Lord thy God. And it shall come to pass that as the Lord rejoiced over you to do you good and to multiply you, so the Lord will rejoice over you to destroy you and to bring you to naught. And ye shall be plucked from off the land whither thou goest to possess it. And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people from the one end of the earth even unto the other. And there thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone.
So the Lord is going to scatter you among all people, all nations. Israel is scattered, and we serving other gods. We ain't serving the one true living God. Israel is caught up in everything. Israel is in Mormonism, who didn't want you in there to begin with. But now you up in it. Wood and stone. Keep reading.
And among these nations shalt thou find no ease, neither shall the sole of thy foot have rest. But the Lord shall give thee there a trembling heart and failing of eyes and sorrow of mind.
So among these nations you ain't going to find no rest. You got to work twice as hard as the next man to make the same amount of money.
Yes.
Or just to show the boss that you want to keep that job. While he just sitting back, he ain't doing nothing. But you got to work twice as hard. That don't make no sense. Didn't they? We just got the right to vote in 1965. 1965, they finally let us vote, which didn't make a difference anyway.
No.
But just think about it. 1960, you've been here since what? Israel been here since almost what? Over. Since the 1600s, you finally got to vote in 1965. And even when they was writing the Constitution, we was what? Less than a man. We was not even a whole man. 3/5 of a person. That's why we get treated the way we get treated. Because if you consider somebody less than human, what you do to them really don't matter because you ain't human anyway. But anyway, skip down to verse 68. Go ahead, read.
And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you.
So now Egypt represented slavery now, because they just got out of Egypt. But Egypt means slavery, the furnace of fire, the house of bondage. He said, look, if you disobey my commandments, I'm going to bring you into slavery again with ships. Once anybody read this, they should know who the children of Israel is. Because there was only one nationality of people that went into slavery in ships. The Chinese didn't go into slavery in ships. Irish people, no matter what they try to tell you, they didn't go to no slavery in no ships. And nobody put them on an auction block to sell them. So let's look at, it's in the handout, slave ads. You're going to be sold as bondmen and bondwomen. Slave ads, Negroes for sale. Not Hamites, Negroes. Not Egyptians, Negroes. Here, read some of the stuff that they described you as. Read that. And watch these sports announcers. They say the same stuff. They be real slick about when it comes to a running back. He's a physical specimen. He's a workhorse. Read this. What they got for sale?
Slave ads. Great sale of slaves. January 10th, 1855. $3, aged from 20 to 26. Strong, able-bodied. 1 wench, Sally, age 42, excellent cook. 1 wench, Lizzie, age 23, with 6-month-old pickaninny. 1 buck, age 52, good kennel man. 17 bucks, aged from 12 to 20, excellent.
Slave ads, sold as bondmen and bondwomen. That's what we were. The Gentile came over with some rice and got some slaves. You were sold. You were a means of merchandise. Trade off. Give them some guns. Give them some slaves. Give me some people. We're going to read that. Let's go to 2 Kings. The Lord said he was going to scatter us. He was going to scatter Israel because they disobeyed him. So this stuff has to come to pass. The blessings were a hot second. Deuteronomy 1 through 14, blessings. Curses, 15 through 68. And we didn't read all of them. 15 through 68. And they have to come to pass. Otherwise, the Lord would be lying. But the books say that God be true and every man a liar. Because if we was not under the curse, I guarantee you we would not be here in this land. Being oppressed, unemployed, disease-stricken. 2 Kings 17, and we're going to start wrapping it up. 2 Kings 17, pick it up at verse 5. Go ahead.
Then the king of Assyria came up throughout all the land and went up to Samaria and besieged it 3 years. In the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria took Samaria and carried Israel away unto Assyria and placed them in Halah and in Habor by the river of Gozan in the cities of the Medes. For so it was that the children of Israel had sinned against the Lord their God, which had brought them up out of the land of Egypt from under the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and had feared other gods, and walked in the statutes of the heathen, whom the Lord cast out from before the children of Israel, and of the kings of Israel, which they had made.
So they ended up worshiping false gods, the thing the Lord told them not to do, and gave them the consequences of what's going to happen to them if they did it. But we read in the beginning, stiff-necked. Didn't want to listen to God. We're going to do our own thing. Okay, when this stuff started happening to you, remember I told you it was going to happen. Skip down to verse 22 and read it.
For the children of Israel walked in all the sins of Jeroboam, which he did. They departed not from them, until the Lord removed Israel out of his sight, as he had said by all his servants the prophets. So was Israel carried away out of their own land to Assyria unto this day.
Okay, let's look at this history reference. It ain't on the handout. Y'all get the other two, but not this one. This is going to let you know what happened. Read what's been highlighted right there, a little bit of all that paragraph. We might skip a little bit, but go ahead.
That's all good. Okay. Tiglath-Pileser III died in 727. As happened so often in antiquity, when a strong king died, conquered people on the fringes of his empire revolted. Israel was no exception. While pretending loyalty to the new Assyrian ruler, Shalmaneser v. Hoshea sought help from the king of Egypt. Upon receiving assurances from the weak Pharaoh, whom was probably Tephnach of the 24th dynasty, Hoshea withheld tribute from Shalmaneser. This was an open declaration of rebellion. Too late, Hoshea realized his mistake. He had touched an Assyrian raw nerve, the potential threat of Egypt. Shalmaneser moved against Israel, and Hoshea was taken prisoner, perhaps while en route to the Assyrian king to make amends. As thousands of people from the towns and villages of Israel crowded behind the walls of Samaria, the Assyrians came and laid siege to the city. If the Assyrian soldiers had little trouble getting to Samaria, they found this city on its solitary hill exceedingly difficult to take. The siege lasted 3 years, one of the longest recorded sieges in antiquity. And though Shalmaneser died and was replaced by Sargon II, the change in monarchs made little difference to Israel. During the siege, suffering increased daily and desperation mounted by the hour until the Assyrians finally breached the walls and took the city.
So you see, the Lord wasn't playing with his people. The Assyrians whipped on their head. One king died. The other one picked up where they left off because of idolatry. You don't want to obey the commandments? I told you this is what I'm going to do to you. So he took the 10 tribes out. We still got Levi end up going back later on, but we got to deal with these last 3 that's down here. Go to Jeremiah 21. Jeremiah 21. So the nation got split. The 10 tribes got taken out. Now it's time for the other 2 to go too, because of disobedience. The Lord is going to tell you. That's why we're here today. And he ain't finished. We're going to let you know that's why we're here. Every time a new nation pops up, I guarantee you Israel is going to be up in there, scattered. America was not around during this time, but here we are. Jeremiah 21 and verse 1. Go ahead.
And the word which came unto Jeremiah from the Lord, when King Zedekiah sent unto him Pashur, the son of Melchiah, and Zephaniah, the son of Maaseiah, the priest, saying, Inquire, I pray thee, of the Lord for us, for Nebuchadrezzar, king of Babylon, maketh war against us. If so be that the Lord will deal with us according to all his wondrous works, that he may go up from us. Then said Jeremiah unto them, Thus shall ye say to Zedekiah, Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, Behold, I will turn back the weapons of war that are in your hands, wherewith ye fight against the king of Babylon and against the Chaldeans, which besiege you without the walls, and I will assemble them into the midst of this city. And I myself will fight against you with an outstretched hand and with a strong arm, even in anger and in fury and in great wrath. And I will smite the inhabitants of this city, both man and beast. They shall die of a great pestilence.
Now, he was so mad at Zedekiah, he said, look, I'm going to fight. I'm going to kill you, man. You fighting against me. I'm going to take you out. Go ahead.
And afterward saith the Lord, I will deliver Zedekiah, king of Judah, and his servants, and the people, and such as are left in this city from the pestilence, from the sword, and from the famine, into the hand of Nebuchadrezzar, king of Babylon, and into the hand of their enemies, and into the hand of those that seek their life. And he shall smite them with the edge of the sword. He shall not spare them, neither have pity, nor have mercy. And unto this people thou shalt say, Thus saith the Lord, Behold, I set before you the way of life and the way of death. He that abideth in this city shall die by the sword, and by the famine, and by the pestilence. But he that goeth out and falleth to the Chaldeans that besiege you, he shall live, and his life shall be unto him for a prey.
So turn yourself in. Surrender. Surrender, you'll live. If you want to stay and fight, you're going to die. You can either go peacefully or you can die trying to fight, because you're going to lose, because the Lord is doing this. Go ahead.
For I have set my face against this city for evil, and not for good, saith the Lord. It shall be given into the hand of the king of Babylon, and he shall burn it with fire.
Okay, let's go to 2 Chronicles 36. Because the Lord said he's going to do it, and it's got to come to pass. Because Israel had kept messing up, and it's time for them to go into captivity. And even then, that didn't stop them. They were still messing up, even when they got back into the land. 2 Chronicles 36. And read 11 and 12. Go ahead.
Zedekiah was 21 years old when he began to reign, and reigned 11 years in Jerusalem. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord his God, and humbled not himself before Jeremiah the prophet, speaking from the mouth of the Lord.
Okay, skip down to verse 17, because he didn't do what he was supposed to do. The Lord sent the prophet, told him how to get out of this fix, and he was like, no, I'm going to do what I want to do. So the Lord said, okay, you want to do what you want to do? I'm going to do what I have to do. Verse 17, read it.
Therefore, he brought upon them the king of the Chaldees, who slew their young men with the sword in the house of their sanctuary, and had no compassion upon the young man or the maiden, old man or him that stooped for age. He gave them all into his hand. See, the Lord got a pattern with his people. When he whipping up on your head, he don't care if you old or young. Just like today. Yeah. Yep.
Just like today. Keep reading.
And all the vessels of the house of God, great and small, and the treasures of the house of the Lord, and the treasures of the king and of his princes, all these he brought to Babylon. And they burnt the house of God, and brake down the wall of Jerusalem, and burnt all the palaces thereof with fire, and destroyed all the goodly vessels thereof. And them that had escaped from the sword carried he away to Babylon, where they were servants to him and his sons until the reign of the kingdom of Persia.
Okay, then let's go read that. Atlas of the Bible, page 143. I don't think y'all had this either. But we're going to get to something y'all do have in a minute. I can't print it all up. Read what's in highlighted right there. Okay. Go ahead.
Jeremiah urged Zedekiah to surrender the city, but the king refused for fear he would be handed over to his Judahite enemies who had already gone over to Babylonians. In the summer of 587, the city's food supply ran out. About the same time, the Babylonians finally succeeded in breaching the walls. At night, Zedekiah and some of his men fled through the southeastern gate of the city towards Jericho, perhaps hoping to reach Ammon, which, unlike others in the abortive coalition, have remained faithful to his word to Zedekiah. But the hapless king was captured on the plains of Jericho and taken northward to Nebuchadnezzar and Riblah in Syria. There Zedekiah's sons were killed before his eyes. Then he was blinded, put in chains, and deported to Babylon.
Okay, that's good. So we see that came to pass. Let's go to Daniel 9. Daniel 9. And this is why Daniel is in captivity, because he got some understanding. He knows what's going on. Daniel 9. I'll pick it up at verse 8. Daniel chapter 9 and verse 8. I'd like to hear them pages flipping. Pretty soon everybody going to have them little tablets and you ain't going to hear nothing but I'd like to hear them pages, man. That you know you reading. Daniel 9 and verse 8, read it.
O Lord, to us belongeth confusion of face, to our kings, to our princes, and to our fathers, because we have sinned against thee. To the Lord our God belong mercies and forgivenesses, though we have rebelled against him. Neither have we obeyed the voice of the Lord our God to walk in his laws, which he set before us by his servants the prophets. Yea, all Israel have transgressed thy law, even by departing, that they might not obey thy voice. Therefore the curse is poured upon us, and the oath that is written in the law of Moses, the servant of God, because we have sinned against him.
And what is that curse that's written in the law of Moses? Deuteronomy chapter 28.
Verses 15 through 16.
So Daniel knew exactly what, hey, we done messed up, Lord. We have sinned against you. So the curse that you poured in the law of Moses, here it is. We live in proof. Here it is. And he's not finished either. Go to Luke 21. Luke 21. So we're going to fast forward about 1,500 years, maybe 500. No, about 600-700 years. So Israel back in the land, under Roman rule, still a slave, but without the chains. And let's see what Jesus is going to tell them. Luke 21 and verse 5. 21 and 5. Read it.
And as some spake of the temple, how it was adorned with goodly stones and gifts, he said, As for these things which ye behold, the days will come, in the which there shall not be left one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. And they asked him, saying, Master, but when shall these things be? And what sign will be there, where there be when these things shall come to pass?
So now the disciples admiring the temple. This is the second temple. The first one, Nebuchadnezzar burned up. So Nehemiah and Ezra, they went back and built the second temple. So this is the one that the disciples are asking him about. But he's telling them, look, it's going to come a time when this place is going to be thrown down. And they're like, wait a minute, what? We've been living good to our standards that we think all this time. We got a temple. We got a little bit of leeway, even though the Romans is, busting us up every now and then. At least we in the land. But he said, look, this stuff is going to be destroyed. We ain't going to get into the rest of it, but skip down to verse 17 and read it. 22. 22.
For these be the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. But woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. For there shall be great distress in the land, and wrath upon this people. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations. And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles, until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled.
So when the Romans start coming and destroy this temple, it's going to be great distress. And those of you that are not killed, you're going to be led away captive. You're going to be kicked out the land again. So let's read it. Go to, this is in the handout. Yeah, you can read it off the paper now. It's out the Atlas of the Bible. Page 201.
Just this part right here.
Yeah.
Okay. Revolts against Rome. In 68, the Roman commander launched a methodical campaign to isolate Jerusalem. The district of Perea, east of the Jordan, was conquered. In the west, Emmaus was taken and a legion garrisoned there. Entering the Jordan Valley from the north through Perea, Roman columns took Jericho, where a second garrison was stationed. Meanwhile, in Jerusalem, various Jewish factions began fighting among themselves for control of the rebellion.
Start right there.
Okay. The walls enclosing the temple and the upper and lower cities were the most formidable barrier of all. Postponing an all-out assault, Titus turned to starvation tactics. A certain amount of food had been smuggled into the city almost nightly during the siege. But now the Romans sealed off Jerusalem completely with the wall of their own, made of earth and some 5 miles of circumference. From the outset of the siege, those attempting to get through the encircling lines had been caught and crucified. Sometimes the daily executions reached 500. The crosses were never bare.
500 people a day being crucified. Mass executions. The Lord wasn't playing. Go ahead.
Inside the city, starvation and disease claimed the mounting toll. Bodies filled the streets and were stacked in houses. Thousands of corpses were thrown from the walls into the valleys below. The surviving rebels made a last-ditch stand within Herod's palace. The battering rams resumed their rhythmic work. When the legionnaires at last broke into this refuge, they found only corpses. Herod's palace and the rest of the upper city were put to the torch. Jerusalem was a city of the dead.
Okay, that's good on that. Let's read one more. This out the last 2 million years. This just goes to show you that history backs up the Bible. Everybody running around thinking this is a fairy tale. This is the real deal right here. And if you don't believe it, believe me. It's going to drop on you. Like a 70, what is it, a talon? 75-pound talon?
From here to here?
Yeah. Okay. Hailstone. It's going to be too late. Go ahead.
Faith survives the dispersion. The crucifixion of Jesus about AD 30 did not end Jewish resistance to the Roman occupation. In 70, when the country was again in a state of revolt, Jerusalem, the holy city, became the core of the resistance to the Romans. Titus, the son of the Emperor Vespasian, proceeded to lay siege to Jerusalem. The city fell, and the inhabitants were enslaved in their thousands and dispersed throughout the Mediterranean world. These were the first dispersion, and worse was to follow.
So this was the first dispersion now. They was cast into throughout the Mediterranean world. And what's part of the Mediterranean world? Africa. West of the Mediterranean. So let's fast forward some years down the road. Because now because the America's coming up, another nation. But the Lord said we're going to go to slavery in ships. Let's look at the handout. I think y'all got a part of it. Y'all got this part. But you probably got the other part too if it's in the handout. Let's read this right here. Yeah, go ahead and read that. We're going to read this right here. Because it says this was the first dispersion and the what did it say? The worst was yet to come? You can't get no worse than this right here. Go ahead.
Africa's living treasure. By conservative estimates, upward of 10 million Africans survived the Middle Passage and were enslaved in the Americas. More than 90% of these Africans were taken to South America and the Caribbean islands.
So 90% of 10 million went where? To South America and the Caribbean islands. Go ahead.
About 4.6%, or roughly half a million Africans, were transported to the United States.
So only 500,000 made it to the U.S. So how do they figure the 12 tribes is within that 500,000? When you got 3 or 4 million down there in South America and the Caribbean islands. Go ahead.
Nearly twice as many were sent to Cuba, 7.3%, Jamaica, 7.8%, Haiti, 9%. The majority of enslaved Africans, about 5 million, were transported to South America, most to Brazil, 38.2%.
So most of the slaves in South America are in Brazil. But you will never know it. Because who do they put out there as what the Brazilians look like? Light skin, Gentile. They are not these are the ones, the slaves went down to Brazil. Brazil looks like Detroit. If you ever been to Detroit.
Yeah, that's real.
Okay, flip over to the other part. It'll show you these arrows, you know. It shows you the arrows where everybody went in that little small box. But don't forget, you see that one arrow that's shooting up? That's going to Europe. That's going right to Europe. So don't think we was just scattered here. We were scattered up in Europe too. Slave trade, that's all it was. You're a commodity. Look at that big fat arrow. It's going right to Brazil, South America. But you'll never know it. They don't teach this stuff. They teach you just Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and Roots and the Book of Negroes, Harriet Tubman. This is the real deal right here. Only a small portion came here to America. The rest of your Hebrew brothers and sisters is down in South America and Central America. All them little islands out there. Australia. Aborigines, that's Israel. Louisiana, you know they got a new race of Negro. What they call them, Creoles? No. Negroes. Because if you a Creole supposed to be what? French and black? What about the Haitian? Ain't he French and black too? How come he ain't no Creole? He's a Haitian, right? But I'm a Creole. Please. Israel is messed up. But you know who you are. Who are they? And where are they? Scattered. Okay, let's get back to the book. Yeah, read some of that stuff. Read that in that little box right there. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I did too much talking. We about to get out of here anyway. But go ahead. Read that in the boxes.
European merchants transported goods such as textiles, iron, guns, and alcohol to Africa, trading their wares for people. They sold the captives to planters and to mine owners in the Americas for gold, silver, sugar, and tobacco, which they took back to Europe.
So they went down there with some guns and alcohol and got them some slaves.
Spain contracted with other European countries to ensure a steady supply of slaves to its colonies. In 1595, the first large contract, or asiento, was issued for the purchase of 38,250 slaves over 9 years, 31,500 of whom had to be delivered alive. The Dutch West India Company, formed in 1621, sought unsuccessfully to establish a monopoly on trade along the coast of the Gulf of Guinea. Which one we go here?
Start up here at the top.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
African slave traders generally did not sell members of their own ethnic group, instead trading those captured from rival peoples.
Wait a minute, what? Ham didn't sell Ham, did he? Ham sold Israel. Go ahead.
Portugal established plantations on Sao Tome, a major sugarcane producing island during the late 15th and 16th centuries. The island also served as an entrepot entrepot for the slave trade in Europe and the Americas. The greatest number of slaves taken to Americas came from the Congo Angola region. European forts, 17.
That's good.
Okay.
That's good. Let's go to Deuteronomy 32. Deuteronomy 32. So we ain't the only slaves in there. They down south too. And not in Mississippi, South America. It's more of us down there than it is up here, according to what we just read. And they serving wood and stone too. They just got finished with this pagan festival, Mardi Gras. Mm-hmm. And it lasts a long time over there. They go 2 weeks. But then you got that big statue of that Jesus up there. But anyway, 32, Deuteronomy 32 and 26. Read that.
I said, I would scatter them into corners. I would make the remembrance of them to cease from among men.
So the Lord said he was going to scatter Israel into corners and make the remembrance of them to cease from among men. Mm-hmm. Nobody calls you Israel. They call you, we was named after a hairstyle in the 70s. What was it, Afro-American? Mm-hmm. Maybe we should be Weave Americans now or Extension Americans or something. But you can't do that because everybody's wearing it. So there's no distinctive feature with you with that. So now you African American or black or Creole, whatever. But Psalm 83. Pick it up at verse 1. So the Lord, this is the hand of the Lord doing this, but you know, like we see, the Lord don't step off the throne and do anything personally. He used other nations to do it. Psalm 83 and verse 1, read it.
Keep not thou silence, O God. Hold not thy peace, and be not still, O God. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, come, and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance.
And we are definitely cut off as a nation. You cannot be a nation if you scattered everywhere. Go ahead.
For they have consulted together with one consent. They are a confederate against thee.
So all these nations came together to accomplish the Lord's mission. And who's right at the top of the list?
The tabernacles of Edom.
Your twin brother financed all these slave ships to get you scattered. Go ahead.
And the Ishmaelites.
Ishmael, the Arabs. The Arabs was the first slave, right? First slave trader. Who was that? Joseph. Yep. Joseph was sold to the Ishmaelites. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Of Moab, and the Hagarenes, Gebal, and Ammon, and Amalek, the Philistines with the inhabitants of Tyre. Asher also is joined with them. They have hope in the children of Lot. Selah.
So Israel's, before we got down to the Gentiles, we were in captivity with people who looked just like us, starting with the Egyptians. Then the Assyrians took us out. Finally, when Nebuchadnezzar came down and took us, then we started with the Gentiles. Now we've been handed down from slave master to slave master. Because after the Babylonians, it was what? The Persians. After them, it was the Greeks and the Romans. Now we're in the Americas, which is an offshoot of England. Mm-hmm. Another European nation. Gentiles is running, and we are under slavery without change now. Yes. It's mental now. They ain't got to change, but you are chained up, but you just don't know it.
Correct.
Now let's go to Hosea 49. And we almost done. 9. Hosea 9. That's a typo. It's Hosea 9, not 49. Hosea chapter 9. And pick it up at verse 1. Hosea 9 and verse 1. Okay, read.
Rejoice not, O Israel, for joy as other people, for thou hast gone a whoring from thy God. thou hast loved a reward upon every corn floor. The floor and the winepress shall not feed them, and the new wine shall fail in her. They shall not dwell in the Lord's land, but Ephraim shall return to Egypt, and they shall eat unclean things in Assyria.
So we know Egypt represents slavery. And they're going to eat unclean things just like we are today. The clean food that we eat is unclean because nobody's keeping the dietary law. The same people that handle that beef in the butcher shop handle the pig too.
Yes.
So if they touching something unclean and they touch something that's clean, the clean stuff is now unclean.
Exactly.
Even the chicken is unclean too. But what can you do? Do the best you can.
Yeah.
Stay away from the swine and the shrimp and the catfish. Eat you some clean food that's defiled in your land of your captivities. Skip down to verse 11 and read it.
As for Ephraim, their glory shall fly away like a bird from the birth and from the womb and from the conception. Though they bring up their children, yet will I bereave them, that there shall not be a man left. Yeah, woe also to them when I depart from them. Ephraim, as I saw Tyrus, is planted in a pleasant place, but Ephraim shall bring forth his children to the murderer.
And Ephraim is none other than Israel. We're dealing with the 10 tribes now. This is still Israel. But it says Ephraim is planted place, but Ephraim shall bring forth his children to the murderer, just like today, who's being gunned down in the streets. Not only by Israel, but by the other nations too.
Yeah.
And it don't make a difference. It don't matter. It's business as usual. Yeah. Oh, well. Go ahead.
Give them, O Lord. What wilt thou give? Give them a miscarrying womb and dry breast. All their wickedness is in Gilgal, for there I hated them. For the wickedness of their doings I will drive them out of mine house. I will love them no more. All their princes are revolters. Ephraim is smitten. Their root is dried up. They shall bear no fruit. Yeah, though they bring forth, yet will I slay even the beloved fruit of their womb. My God will cast them away, because they did not hearken unto him, and they shall be wanderers among the nations.
So you see the guy we're dealing with, he's talking about killing kids. And this is all because of our forefathers' disobedience. Yeah. This is why Israel is here today and everywhere else scattered. And that ain't it. Go to Isaiah 42. Isaiah 42. And this is a curse. This is part of the curse too. Isaiah 42. And we're going to pick it up at verse 22. So these curses are assigned to identify who is God's people. Isaiah 42 and 22. Read it.
But this is a people robbed and spoiled. They are all of them snared in holes. They are hid in prison houses. They are for a prey, and none delivereth, for a spoil, and none saith, restore. Who among you will give ear to this? Who will hearken and hear for the time to come? Who gave Jacob for a spoil, and Israel to the robbers? Did not the Lord, he against whom we have sinned? For they would not walk in his ways, neither were they obedient unto his law.
So the Lord said, because we were disobedient to his law, he's going to lock us up. This ain't in the handout, but I got y'all can see the colors up here. This is the inmate population in Virginia. Who do you think is all red? Israel. South Dakota. That's a flat land, ain't it? Who's the biggest graph up there? I don't know if there's that many black people in South Dakota. But apparently they locked up in prison houses. Israel. The entire United States incarceration by ethnicity. The whole nation, United States. Who's at the top? Israel. South Dakota, man. And you know who's the lowest, right? But this was a killer right here. All that red. Israel. And you can do the statistics on every state. Look them up. It'll show the same thing. How can you be a small portion? How can you be few in numbers, but a majority of you are locked up if that ain't coming from the Lord? Let's go to 25 and read that.
Therefore, he had poured upon him the fury of his anger and the strength of battle. And he has set him on fire round about, yet he knew not. And it burned him, yet he laid it not to heart.
Okay, let's go to Jeremiah 31. Jeremiah 30. And all this look bleak and gloomy and bad. But there's some light at the end. But one thing we got to understand, we got to live out this curse. But those of us, even though we're not a nation, we are individuals. Yeah. And it is up to you as an individual to turn back to the Lord. Because you're the only one that's going to save you now. It's you. You have to turn back to the Lord, start obeying his laws, statutes, and commandments. Jeremiah 31 and verse 35. And the Lord is going to show you this. 31 and 35, read it.
Thus saith the Lord, which giveth the sun for a light by day, and the ordinances of the moon and of the stars for a light by night, which divideth the sea when the waves thereof roar. The Lord of hosts is his name. If those ordinances depart from before me, saith the Lord, then the seed of Israel also shall cease from being a nation before me forever.
So if the stars stop shining at night, Israel is gone. But we know the stars still shine. So Israel is still out there. Keep reading.
Thus saith the Lord, if heaven above can be measured, and the foundations of the earth searched out beneath, I will also cast off all the seed of Israel for all that they have done, saith the Lord.
So if any of these mad scientists out here who think they can measure heaven and the depths of the earth, if you can come up with an exact figure, Israel is gone. But they can't do it, so Israel is still around. We finished that?
Yes.
Okay, let's go to Revelation 21 to show you, even in the end, Israel is going to still be on the scene. And this is after the Lord has taken out the nations. 1,000-year millennium is over with. New Jerusalem is coming down. And let's see who's right on the top of the gate. Revelation 21, and pick it up at verse 1. Okay, read it.
And I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea. And I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband.
So this is New Jerusalem coming down. And the Lord describes a lot of things about it, but skip down to verse 12 and read that. That's the one I want, verse 12.
And had a wall great and high, and had 12 gates, and at the gates 12 angels, and the names written thereon, which are the names of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel.
So Israel is still on the scene, even in the end, when that new city comes down. So Israel, who are they? Where are they? They scattered. But who are they? A dark people cursed by God. Negroes, whatever you want to call them. Negroes, Hispanics, the black ones, of course. What other names they got for these other brothers? Puerto Ricans, you know, people who don't want to be black, they want to be something else. The Jamaicans, they Israel too. The Haitians, Latinos, Belizeans, Aborigines. This is all Israel. Let's go to Deuteronomy 30. Because this is your way out right here. Wherever you scattered, the Lord got this Bible written in your language that you can read. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's some crazy Hebrews over there too talking this J stuff in a language that in French to them Haitians. Israel is there. I guarantee you they out there. Because if they here, talking crazy, they got to be over there too. Because the Lord said he's going to be a little sanctuary in everywhere that he scattered Israel. So we're not the only ones over here in America who know that we Israel. And all those other nations, they know they Israel too. And them brothers doing some teaching too. And I'm quite sure they're going with some opposition to these same brothers that's over here dealing with this J. Because I don't know what letter French is, how they say Jesus in France, in French. But if it's got something to do with it, whatever it is, I know they fighting on them. Because that ain't how you say, that's not his name in French. But anyway, Deuteronomy 30 and verse 1, read it.
And it shall come to pass, when all these things are come upon thee, the blessing and the curse, which I have set before thee, and thou shalt call them to mind among all the nations, whither the Lord thy God hath driven thee.
So it shall come to pass, when all these things, the blessing and the curse, we had the blessings, now we're under the curse. Keep reading.
And shalt return unto the Lord thy God, and shalt obey his voice according to all that I command thee this day, thou and thy children, with all thine heart and with all thy soul, that then the Lord thy God will turn thy captivity and have compassion upon thee, and will return and gather thee from all the nations whither the Lord thy God hath scattered thee. If any of thine be driven out unto the outmost parts of heaven, from thence will the Lord thy God gather thee, and from thence will he fetch thee.
So who's coming back to get his people? The Lord. So until then, we are scattered. So where is Israel? Scattered among all the nations. Not over there in the land right now. Because if the true Israelites was over in that land right now, you'd have David, Moses would be there, all the prophets, all the disciples, except for Judas. Paul would be there. Wouldn't be no fighting. So something is wrong somewhere. Gentiles got you thinking this is a spiritual rebirth of Israel when them. No. The books say this, and this is in their Torah too. It's right there. Where we at? Matthew 29. He's going to come back and get his people. Let's go look at it. 24. He's going to come back and get his people. But until then, you're still scattered. We're still over here in America, Haiti, Cuba, Australia, China, Russia, Greenland, Iceland, Alaska. Wherever there's some people, Israel is there. Because if they're not there, then the Lord is lying. But we know the Lord ain't lying. You can be freezing, but you over there in Iceland. 24 and 29, read it.
Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. And then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory.
And people going to be crying because they know they done messed up. They've been giving the wrong people the wrong blow. Because the Lord is going to turn this thing back the way it's supposed to be.
Yes.
The people that's on the bottom, when the Lord come back, they're going to be on top. And right now, who's on the bottom? Israel, the so-called Negro, Hispaniola, Latino, whatever you want to call yourself. If you're on the bottom in any nation, you put your finger on Israel. Because the curses identify who you are. Because there's only one nation or one group of people that has all these curses fall upon them. Who's number one in the prison system? Israel. Why? Because the Lord said that's the way it was going to be. Keep reading.
And he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other.
So we read that in Deuteronomy. Let's go to Jeremiah 31, and I got one more place. Jeremiah 31. Jeremiah 31. And pick it up at verse 8. So there's some light at the end of the tunnel. It's not all gloomy, but we just got to live out this curse. 31 and 8. Jeremiah 31 and verse 8. Okay, read.
Behold, I will bring them from the north country and gather them from the coast of the earth, and with them the blind and the lame, the woman with child, and her that travaileth with child together. A great company shall return thither. They shall come with weeping, and with supplications will I lead them. I will cause them to walk by the rivers of waters in a straight way, wherein they shall not stumble. For I am a father to Israel, and Ephraim is my firstborn. Hear the word of the Lord, O ye nations, and declare it in the isles afar off, and say, He that scattered Israel will gather him and keep him as a shepherd doth his flock.
So hear the word of the Lord, O ye nations, and the islands afar off. The Lord is coming to get his people. Flip back to Jeremiah 30, and this is the last verse. Jeremiah 30, and we're going to start at verse 10. Because this is an end to captivity as promised by the Lord. He's going to end this captivity. But he ain't going to do it until he gets back. But until then, we are in captivity. 30 and 10, read it.
Therefore, fear thou not, O my servant Jacob, saith the Lord. Neither be dismayed, O Israel. For lo, I will save thee from afar, and thy seed from the land of their captivity. And Jacob shall return, and shall be in rest, and be quiet, and none shall make him afraid.
And that's going to be a glorious occasion right there, boy. You're going to be restful and quiet. You ain't got to be afraid of nobody. Go ahead.
For I am with thee, saith the Lord, to save thee. Though I make a full end of all nations whither I have scattered thee, yet will I not make a full end of thee. But I will correct thee in measure, and will not leave thee altogether unpunished. For thus saith the Lord, Thy bruise is incurable, and thy wound is grievous. There is none to plead thy cause, that thou mayest be bound up. Thou hast no healing medicines. All thy lovers have forgotten thee. They seek thee not. For I have wounded thee with the wound of an enemy, with the chastisement of a cruel one, for the multitude of thine iniquity, because thy sins were increased.
Go ahead.
Why criest thou for thine affliction? Thy sorrow is incurable for the multitude of thine iniquity. Because thy sins were increased, I have done these things unto thee.
So you see why all this is happening? The Lord is doing this because we have sinned against him. Keep reading.
Therefore, all they that devour thee shall be devoured.
So everybody's stomping you down. I'm going to come back and flip this thing back to where it's supposed to be, and they going to get got. Go ahead.
And all thine adversaries, every one of them, shall go into captivity. And they that spoil thee shall be a spoil. And all that prey upon thee will I give for a prey. For I will restore health unto thee. I will heal thee of thy wounds, saith the Lord. Because they call thee an outcast, saying, This is Zion, whom no man seeketh after. Thus saith the Lord, Behold, I will bring again the captivity of Jacob's tents, and have mercy on his dwelling places, and the city shall be builded upon her own heap, and the palace shall remain after the manner thereof. Mm-hmm. And out of them shall proceed thanksgiving, the voice of them that make merry. And I will multiply them, and they shall not be few. I will also glorify them, and they shall not be small.
Skip down to verse 22.
And ye shall be my people, and I will be your God.
And I hope you got some understanding in Jesus' name.